What if nothing was never truly empty? What if the word nothing has always been a misunderstanding, not a void, not a silence, but something far stranger? We often picture it as an endless black screen, a hollow darkness stretching without sound or weight. Yet even the idea of that darkness is already a kind of something. True nothingness may not even be a state we can imagine. Physics whispers that emptiness itself is alive with invisible tension. A vacuum is not bare, but restless, a field humming with tiny fluctuations. Even where we expect silence, there are whispers. Even where we expect absence, there is presence, shifting just beyond our sight. Imagine a time before the first atom, before a single point of light, before space stretched itself open. There was no star, no earth, not even the fabric of time unfolding. And yet, from this absence, something stirred. Tiny seeds of uncertainty, fluctuations in what we might call nothing, gave rise to everything. Not because nothing wanted to become something, but because nothing was never truly empty in the first place. When we close our eyes and try to picture nothing, our minds build rooms of shadow, or skies without stars. But each image we create betrays us. It is still a picture, still made of something. Could it be that the human mind is incapable of imagining true nothing? Maybe our thoughts are always tethered to memory, to shape, to texture. Nothing slips through our fingers because we cannot separate it from the presence it always hides behind. Even in the deepest cave, where no light enters, there are stones, echoes, the smell of minerals on air. Even in the silence of the ocean floor, currents move faintly, life hides in shadows, pressure holds weight. We live in a world where the absence of one thing is always filled by another. So what, then, could the universe have meant when it began from nothing? Perhaps what we call nothing was the most fertile state of all. Like soil stripped bare, waiting for the first root. Like still water before the first ripple. Physics tells us that fields may have existed before time, invisible stages set long before the actors stepped upon them. The Higgs field, quantum foam, fluctuations rising and falling endlessly, not visible, not solid, but a trembling readiness. A readiness that one day unfolded into the cosmos we now drift within. And here is the quiet wonder, maybe there was no sudden beginning. Maybe there was never a moment when nothing truly became something. Perhaps the universe was always suspended in a kind of half-state, neither absence nor presence, but possibility. A whisper waiting to be heard. It is humbling to imagine that what we call nothing may be richer than all the matter around us. That in every void between stars, in every gap between particles, the same restless potential still lingers. Silence humming. Stillness trembling. A paradox hiding beneath the word. And so we drift with this question, unsettled. If nothing was never empty, then what truly began at the Big Bang? Was it the birth of matter, or only the awakening of our perception? And if the emptiness we fear is always filled, what does it mean to be alone in a universe where absence does not exist? The silence before creation. Silence is not the same as nothingness. Silence is presence without sound, a stillness that cradles what is yet to come. Before the first star ignited, before the fire of fusion painted the sky, silence was the only language. Not the silence of a quiet forest or an empty room, but a silence deeper than all imagination, a silence without air, without space, without the possibility of echo. We may wonder, what does silence mean when no ear exists to hear it? Is silence still silence when there is nothing to measure it against? Our world teaches us to think of it as absence, a pause between notes, a calm between storms. But before creation, silence was not between things. It was all there was. In geology, silence often marks the spaces between cataclysms. The rock record carries long, patient stillness where rivers once slowed, where mountains eroded to dust grain by grain. In fossils, silence lingers where entire species vanished, leaving behind only shapes pressed into stone. Silence is not a void, it is the memory of things lost, the breath of time measured in what no longer remains. Could it be the same before the Big Bang? Could the silence before creation be less an emptiness and more a waiting, a stillness poised on the edge of becoming? Like the held breath before the first word is spoken, or the quiet pause before the ocean sends its next wave to shore. Perhaps silence itself was the first element. Not hydrogen, not helium, but the soft balance of nothing and everything suspended together. A calm that held all futures folded within it. A silence dense with hidden order. And yet, silence is fragile. Even the faintest fluctuation can disturb it. Quantum physics suggests that the vacuum quivered with restless possibility. A whisper broke the stillness, a ripple no larger than imagination, and silence cracked into soundless fire. The Big Bang was not an explosion in space, but the birth of space itself. Out of silence, expansion. Out of stillness, rushing motion. When we listen to the faint afterglow, the cosmic microwave background, the cooled remnant of creation, we are, in a way, listening to the silence that came before. It is an echo of quiet undone, a fossil of the stillness that broke. Just as a canyon carries the memory of rivers long vanished, the universe carries within it the ghost of its first silence. And here we are, billions of years later, listening for that hush. Our telescopes stretch deep into time, reaching past galaxies, searching for the boundary where silence gave way. But each time we push further, we find not an end but another layer of quiet, another veil of mystery. Maybe silence was not broken at all. Maybe it simply changed shape. The roar of galaxies expanding, the hum of radiation, the burning of stars, all of it could be the silence still speaking, in another form. Silence becoming motion, silence becoming fire, silence becoming the long unfolding of time. And so we ask softly, if silence was the first language, does it still linger beneath every sound we hear? Is the quiet between our own breaths a distant echo of the universe before it began? The silence before creation does not vanish. It waits, patiently, beneath the surface of everything. And as we step forward, we begin to wonder, if silence itself was creation's first gift, what new truths might it still be holding, hidden within its hush? Time without a beginning. Time is the current we all drift upon, yet when we trace it back, when we try to find its first ripple, it seems to vanish into mist. Physics tells us that time, as we know it, began with the Big Bang. Before that moment, there was no ticking clock, no flowing river of seconds. But can something so essential, so deeply stitched into the fabric of our existence, really have a beginning? Or is the birth of time only the boundary of our understanding? Imagine time not as a straight arrow, not as a single line with a point of origin, but as a circle, a loop with no clear beginning and no final end. Many cosmologists have speculated on cyclical universes, vast expansions that eventually collapse, only to be born again. In such a picture, time itself has no first step. It simply curves endlessly back into itself, like a snake swallowing its own tail. Could it be that we are not living in the first universe, but only in the latest chapter of an infinite story, one written across the same timeless canvas? Even geology whispers of cycles, mountains rising, eroding, sinking back into the mantle, only to emerge again in new forms. Oceans advance and retreat, continents shatter and collide, life blooms and fades. Nothing is ever truly lost, only reshaped, only returned in another form. Perhaps time, on the grandest scale, obeys the same rhythm, never beginning, never ending, but always circling. But what does it mean for us, small as we are, to live inside such a loop? Does it mean our universe has existed countless times before, each time with galaxies born, stars burning, civilizations rising and fading, memories erased with each collapse? If so, then even in the face of vast repetition, what we call now remains precious, because we cannot step outside the moment to compare it. We only know this one flow, even if it has flowed forever. There are other theories too, strange, delicate ideas that time might be an illusion, a property that emerges only when matter interacts, only when change becomes possible. Could it be that before the first change, before the first transformation, there was no time because there was nothing yet to measure? If this is true, then the Big Bang was not simply the beginning of matter, but the first breath that made time itself possible. A breath that continues still, carrying us forward. And yet, what does forward mean when no beginning exists? Our human language is built on sequences, first, then, after. But perhaps the universe is less linear than we imagine. Perhaps the truth is that all of time exists at once, every moment layered like pages in a book we can only read one word at a time. From that perspective, there was never a first page. The book was always whole, even if we cannot see it. It is humbling, even unsettling, to think that what we call the beginning may only be a corner of something endless, a window opening onto a vast landscape with no horizon. And if time never had a beginning, can it ever have an end? Or are we carried in a tide that cannot stop, only shift its shape, only ripple into new forms of being? The thought drifts through us quietly, like a slow tide. Perhaps the true mystery is not why time began, but why we feel it flowing at all. And as we lean deeper into that thought, another question begins to form. waiting in the silence beyond. If time itself may never have begun, what then does it mean to speak of memory, the memory of nothing? The memory of nothing. Memory is fragile, a delicate thread spun between moments. It tells us where we have been, but it is never whole. It fades, it reshapes, it forgets. And yet without memory, we would not know ourselves. We would not know that time has passed at all. So how could the universe, vast and ancient, remember a time when there was nothing? It seems impossible. If nothing truly existed before the Big Bang, there should be no trace of it, no fossil of silence, no imprint left behind. But perhaps the universe itself carries memory in ways we do not yet understand. Entropy, the law that all systems drift toward disorder, may be the most profound memory of all. It whispers that something has already happened, that energy has already been spent, that time has already flowed. Entropy is the echo of what came before, even if what came before was silence. When we look at rocks, we see memory hardened into layers. Volcanic ash pressed into stone, the ripple marks of ancient seas frozen in limestone, the carbonized shadow of a fern leaf pressed flat by time. These are the fossils of presence. But the universe seems to hold fossils of absence too, the faint radiation that lingers from its first breath, the cooling pattern of the cosmic microwave background, a memory etched across the whole sky. Could this be the memory of nothing itself, a silent trace of what came before creation? Philosophy reminds us that memory is never only about what is present, but also about what is missing. When we remember someone who is gone, we are remembering their absence as much as their presence. Could the cosmos do the same? Could it carry a memory not of what existed, but of what did not yet exist? A record of emptiness, preserved in the very fabric of space-time? Perhaps the universe does not remember nothing as a place, but as a transition, the fragile edge where stillness gave way to movement. Like a scar on skin, faint but enduring, the universe may carry the subtle mark of that shift. The very laws of physics could be the memory of how creation emerged from absence. And yet memory is always incomplete. Just as rocks erode, just as fossils crumble, just as our own recollections blur with time, the memory of nothing may also fade. Perhaps what we call mystery, our inability to grasp what came before, is simply the universe forgetting. Forgetting its own silence. Forgetting its own absence. Forgetting the shape of what it once was not. But forgetting is not the same as losing. Forgetting makes space for wonder. It leaves open doors that cannot close. And so we ask ourselves, if the universe can forget, what else might it have already erased? What stories of earlier moments, earlier cycles, earlier silences, might be buried so deeply that only faint echoes remain? The memory of nothing is not a story written in full sentences. It is only an impression, a shadow, a trace of silence. And yet, even that trace is enough to remind us of the fragility of being. It tells us that what exists today may one day dissolve into absence too, and still, some faint imprint will linger, waiting to be found. And if this much can be forgotten, if even silence itself can fade, then we must ask softly, what else might the universe have let slip from its memory? Quantum whispers in the void. When we speak of nothing, we imagine silence. But physics tells us the void is never quiet. Even in the deepest emptiness, something stirs. Tiny fluctuations tremble in the vacuum, brief sparks of existence that rise and vanish faster than thought. They are called quantum fluctuations, the whispers of a universe that refuses to remain still. Imagine a canvas that paints itself, then erases itself, over and over again. Virtual particles appear from nowhere, exist for the briefest breath of time, and then vanish back into silence. Not because anything commands them to, but because emptiness itself is unstable. The void shivers. It cannot help but whisper. These whispers may feel impossible to picture, but perhaps we can think of them like ripples on still water. Even on a calm pond, air stirs, insects touch the surface, and tiny waves flicker across what seems unmoving. The vacuum is the same, a sea of potential, disturbed by quivers so small that only the mathematics of quantum physics can feel their presence. And yet, from whispers, universes may be born. Some theories suggest that our own cosmos began as a fluctuation, a small, restless tremor in a field of nothingness that refused to remain empty. A spark of imbalance that swelled into all that is. From silence, fire. From nothing, everything. This idea feels both humbling and unsettling. If the universe could arise from a fluctuation, then the line between being and not being is thinner than we ever imagined. It means that creation is not a rare miracle, but a constant possibility. That within every silence, another beginning may already be trembling, waiting to emerge. Quantum whispers also remind us that what appears empty is always full. The space between atoms in your body is not barren, but alive with energy, humming invisibly. Even the vacuum between galaxies, which seems so dark and endless, carries fields, particles, and restless potential. There is no such thing as perfect stillness. Perhaps this is why nothing feels so mysterious to us. Because it is not really nothing at all. It is a veil of activity too small for us to see, but too persistent to ignore. We live inside a cosmos where silence is never truly silent, where emptiness is never truly empty. And if such whispers can bring forth a universe, what else might they be capable of? Could there be endless beginnings hidden in the tremble of the void, countless worlds flickering into existence only to vanish before they grow? Could nothingness itself be a fertile ground, forever giving rise to possibilities, most of which we never witness? The whispers are too faint for us to hear, too fleeting for us to hold. But their presence changes everything. They remind us that absence is never whole, that stillness is always trembling beneath the surface. And perhaps, as we listen softly, we begin to wonder, if the void is filled with whispers, what larger structures might those whispers one day become? And so, gently, our thoughts drift to the shape of space itself, the hidden stage on which these whispers dance, the geometry of nothingness waiting to be seen. The geometry of nothingness. We often think of space as flat, as an endless sheet stretched open in every direction. But even emptiness may carry a hidden structure. Nothingness, if we look closely, may be curved, folded, and bent. The universe suggests that space itself is not a blank canvas, but a living fabric, shaped by the presence and even the absence of matter. Einstein taught us that space and time together form a fabric, one that bends under the weight of stars and planets. A massive body curves the geometry around it, and that curvature tells matter how to move. Gravity is not an invisible pull, but the bending of emptiness itself. So even where nothing exists, geometry waits, shaping the silence. Imagine a vast sheet, stretched taut, and a stone placed in its center. The sheet curves, and marbles rolling nearby are drawn inward, not because the stone pulls them, but because the geometry has changed. Now take away the stone. The sheet is flat again, but was it ever truly flat, or does the fabric itself have a hidden grain, an invisible structure we cannot smooth away? Cosmology suggests that the shape of space may be infinite, or curved back upon itself, or perhaps folded in ways our senses cannot perceive. Nothingness may not be simple emptiness, but a complex geometry beyond sight. Just as crystals hold hidden lattices that shape their strength, space itself may hold patterns that shape creation. There are clues, faint but persistent. The way galaxies cluster, the way light bends across billions of years, the way the universe expands, all point to a hidden geometry guiding the whole. Even the vacuum, which seems like nothing, is influenced by this structure. Space is not a stage where the play unfolds. It is part of the play itself. Speculative physics asks even stranger questions. Could geometry itself give birth to matter? Could the very structure of nothingness generate particles, fields, even time itself? If so, then the universe did not emerge into emptiness, the emptiness itself was already the seed. A seed not of matter, but of form, waiting for content to fill it. Perhaps this is why we struggle to imagine true nothing. Because nothingness is not the absence of form, but the form without content. A skeleton without flesh, a rhythm without notes, a pattern without color. Something that feels like absence, yet holds everything within it, waiting to be awakened. And here lies the quiet beauty: geometry does not vanish, even in silence. The empty spaces between stars are still bent and curved. The void between particles is still structured. Emptiness has a shape, and that shape whispers its presence through the paths that light follows and the ways galaxies drift. Maybe, then, the universe began not from nothing, but from form. A hidden lattice of possibility, trembling with potential, finally unfolding into matter and motion. And if that is true, then nothingness itself is the most intricate design of all. As we rest within this thought, the silence grows softer, deeper. Geometry, fluctuation, silence, memory, all blending into a mystery that deepens the further we follow it. And slowly, another question rises, fragile but insistent: if emptiness is shape, if nothing holds form, then what does it mean when zero conceals infinity? The silence beneath our feet. Beneath the ground we walk upon lies a silence deeper than any library, older than any story we have told. It is not an empty silence, but one filled with the weight of ages, pressed into layers of stone and sediment. Each stratum is a page in a book without ink, written not with words but with pressure, with heat, with the long patience of time. When we step across the soil, we walk across 1,000 vanished landscapes, deserts that have turned to rock, seas that have folded into cliffs, forests that have been swallowed and changed into coal. We hardly notice it, yet the ground holds everything that has been, waiting in mute endurance. Sometimes, when the earth shifts and quakes, it feels as though this silence speaks back. A mountain rises, a valley opens, and for a moment the buried past reveals its outline. Fossils of creatures that no longer breathe are lifted into the daylight. Pebbles once smoothed by waves return to the surface, carried upward as if time itself is exhaling. What we see as a quiet stone is, in truth, the hardened memory of a world that has already disappeared. And yet, most of this underground memory will never be read. So much is erased before it can even be recorded. Entire civilizations of forests dissolve in the acids of rain. Vast plains are ground away by glaciers. Rivers sweep stories into the sea, where they vanish into the cycle of subduction, dragged beneath the crust and melted into anonymity. Perhaps this is why the earth feels so secretive, because it forgets almost everything, holding only fragments in its deep silence. But if the ground beneath us is always forgetting, why do we sense such permanence in the world around us? Why does a mountain seem eternal when we know it is only passing through one stage of its long erosion? Why do we build monuments in stone, believing they will endure, when the stone itself is only temporary? Maybe it is because we, as living beings, measure time in breaths, in seasons, in generations, and to us, the slowness of rock feels like immortality. But it is not. Even the bedrock is slipping away, grain by grain, into dust and sediment, into oceans and rivers, into the endless churn. And so we walk across the silence, rarely aware of the stories it hides. We plant cities on forgotten seabeds. We pave roads over vanished swamps. We sink foundations into what was once the floor of ancient forests. Our footsteps echo faintly against these layers, but the earth does not answer. It simply absorbs, as it always has. Perhaps the silence is not indifference, but a kind of patience. Perhaps the earth waits for someone to listen closely enough, to lean their ear to the ground and hear the soft tremor of buried histories. For in its own way, silence can be a kind of voice, a voice that does not shout, but lingers. And yet, if silence can hold so much, what else might be buried in the dark beneath us, hidden just out of reach? The ocean that remembers. The ocean is not only water, it is memory in motion. Every wave that curls toward the shore carries whispers from faraway places, whispers that began thousands of miles away and hundreds of years ago. The sea is not still, not even for a moment, yet it holds the most ancient archives of all. For in its depths lie sediments older than mountains, currents that have cycled since the birth of continents, and the remains of creatures whose names we have never known. To float upon the ocean is to rest on a moving library, one that erases and rewrites itself endlessly. Salt, suspended like forgotten tears, has drifted here from rivers, from rocks, from rains long fallen. With every tide, the ocean swallows and releases, as if breathing the memory of the earth itself. But much of this memory sinks into darkness. At the ocean floor, where sunlight never reaches, dust from continents gathers in soft blankets. Shells of microscopic creatures drift down like snow, forming layers as delicate as lace, yet heavy enough to carry the passage of epochs. Over time, these layers thicken, pressed into stone, sealing within them the evidence of climates, the chemistry of vanished atmospheres, the echo of mass extinctions. In those silent depths, every change is recorded. And yet, not forever. The same oceans that preserve also destroy. Beneath trenches, whole sections of seabed are pulled into the mantle, recycled into fire. What was once a record becomes molten, its script dissolved. This cycle means that even as the ocean remembers, it also forgets, casting entire chapters into nothingness. Perhaps this is why so much of our planet's story is missing, because the sea both guards and erases at the same time. When we look out at the horizon, we often think of the ocean as endless, unknowable. But it is more than mystery, it is a living archive, always shifting, always rewriting. Could it be that some trace of us will one day sink into those depths, becoming part of the silent record? Could the next great civilization, long after us, read our existence not in stone, but in the chemistry of the sea? The thought is both humbling and comforting that long after our voices fade, some quiet part of us may drift in the salt water, dissolved but not gone. Perhaps memory does not need permanence. Perhaps it only needs movement, a rhythm, like waves returning endlessly to shore. And still, if the ocean holds this much, we must wonder, what other hidden archives exist in the corners of the earth, waiting in silence for someone to remember? The bones of forgotten mountains. Beneath our feet, the earth hides entire skeletons of mountains, the bones of ranges that once scraped the sky but have since been ground into silence. Not all mountains endure like the Himalayas, many are temporary monuments, raised by the restless push of continents, then dissolved grain by grain into the waiting seas. Appalachians once towered higher than Everest, their granite hearts glinting in the young sun, but now they stand as quiet shadows of their former glory, worn down by the patient hand of time. It is strange to think that what feels eternal to us is nothing more than a passing breath to the earth itself. The crust carries the memory of their rise and fall, yet even that memory is restless, folded and thrust into new shapes, overwritten by the next collision, the next tearing apart. If we close our eyes, we can almost hear the weight of those vanished mountains pressing into the deep, their sediments drifting like whispers into ocean basins, buried, compacted, turned to stone. And stone too forgets. Layers fold, fracture, melt, and the very signature of a vanished mountain can vanish again, erased by heat, swallowed into the mantle, recycled into magma. A mountain becomes sand, the sand becomes rock, the rock returns as fire, and then, perhaps, as mountain once more. But is it the same mountain, or only an echo wearing a new name? When we trace the mineral grains in sandstone, when we measure the isotope ratios in zircons, we are peering through a keyhole into an ancient world that is no longer here. Each crystal holds a clock, ticking in silence, counting the moments since it cooled. Each grain tells us of a mountain that once stood where there is now only plain. Perhaps this is why mountains affect us so deeply, not simply because of their height, but because they remind us of impermanence, even in their seeming permanence. We may climb them to feel above time, yet they too are falling, inch by inch, softened by rain, fractured by frost, abraded by wind. We might imagine our ancestors watching the slow collapse of their own towering ranges, never knowing the full story of what had been before. And now, we stand in that same position, surrounded by mountains that will one day become memory. How many worlds of stone have already been lost before us? How many peaks have risen and crumbled, leaving only a faint shimmer in the rocks below? The Earth does not mourn them. The Earth remembers them differently, not in photographs or names, but in the endless cycle of matter reshaped. For us, though, to imagine the bones of forgotten mountains is to recognize that even landscapes breathe and erode like living beings, that even the strongest ridges bend to time's quiet hand. And if mountains can vanish without a trace, what of us, who leave marks so fragile, so brief, so easily ground into dust? Perhaps our cities, too, will become sediments, folded into some distant range yet unborn. Perhaps future peaks will carry our ruins inside their cores. And yet, if even mountains can disappear, what else might be erased from Earth's story before we ever know it was there? The silence of empty oceans. There were oceans long before our own, vast basins that stretched wider than continents, filling the planet with water that has since disappeared into the deep interior. The seas we know are not the first seas. They are merely the latest chapter in a long history of salt and tide. Once, the Panthalassic Ocean encircled nearly the entire globe, an unbroken sheet of blue that cradled the single supercontinent Pangaea. Before that, oceans like Iapetus, Reich, and Tethys opened and closed in slow rhythm, like lungs breathing in stone. To stand on the shore today is to hear only the faintest echo of those vanished waters. Their waves no longer crash, their creatures no longer swim. Yet their presence lingers in the fossils buried deep within the rocks, trilobites entombed where waves once rolled. What is an ocean, really? Not simply water, but memory, a vast, shifting memory etched into the crust. Oceanic plates are born at ridges, spread outward, and are pulled down again at trenches. Most of the ocean floor we see is no older than 200 million years, young by Earth's standards, endlessly erased and rewritten. The truly ancient oceans lie hidden, subducted, their sediments pressed into mountains, their basalts melted into magma. Oceans forget themselves more quickly than any landscape on Earth. The salt we taste in the sea today is not eternal but borrowed, dissolved from rock, carried downstream by rivers. Each wave is a mixture of water molecules that once cycled through glaciers, rainstorms, underground aquifers, even the breath of animals. To swim in the ocean is to swim in the recycled memory of the planet. And yet, there is silence in knowing how much has already been erased. We will never stand on the shores of Iapetus. We will never watch the tides of Tethys rising beneath the sun. Those seas have been folded away, dissolved into stone, forgotten by everything except the faint record of isotopes and sediments. If oceans can vanish, then what of the life that depends on them? Entire ecosystems, entire worlds of creatures, have come and gone, leaving only fragments for us to imagine. And what if there are oceans we have not yet found, deep reservoirs hidden within the mantle, locked inside minerals, waiting to be released again? Could the Earth still be reshaping its waters, pulling them inward and then breathing them back out across eons? If so, then the ocean itself is less a place than a pulse, a rhythm of the planet that flows and retreats, never constant, never secure. And so we walk along our modern shores, listening to the waves, unaware of how many other waves once broke here before. The silence of empty oceans surrounds us, reminding us that what we see is only a fleeting version of what the Earth has held. And if the seas themselves can disappear, how much else in Earth's story might be swallowed without a sound, leaving us to dream of what has been lost? The drift of continents. There are forces beneath our feet that we never truly feel. Slow, steady, unseen. The surface of the Earth has never been still, not even for a single heartbeat of deep time. What feels to us like solid ground is only the skin of something restless, a shell drifting, cracking, folding back into itself. The continents, the lands we stand upon, were not always here. They did not look as they do today, nor did they rest in the same places. Long before us, long before the memory of forests or rivers, the crust of the Earth was already wandering. The rocks tell us this story, quietly, with the scars of ancient collisions. Some mountains were once the shorelines of vanished oceans, raised when plates pushed against one another, folding seabeds into peaks. Some valleys, now green with life, were once cradled beneath glaciers or split by volcanic fire. The land is not permanent. It is borrowed. It moves as if in a slow dream. Imagine a time when the continents were joined, when they touched as one vast body. They called it Pangaea, a supercontinent that gathered all the world into itself. It stretched across the earth like a sleeping animal, coastlines locked together in an embrace of stone. But Pangaea was not eternal. Slowly, almost too slowly to comprehend, it began to break. Cracks opened, seas spilled in, and the land drifted apart. The world we know as separated continents, scattered islands, deep oceans, was born not from design but from the slow, inevitable unraveling of rock. When we see maps today, we imagine them as fixed. Borders carved and painted, oceans blue and steady. Yet if we stretch our minds back, if we let our perception drift across millions of years, the outlines blur. Africa leans towards South America, a puzzle waiting to be fit back together. India sails northward, colliding with Asia, raising the Himalayas skyward. Australia drifts like a raft into the wide Pacific. We do not notice, but everything is still moving. And what does this mean for memory? A city built on the edge of a continent may not remain where it is forever. Someday, perhaps far beyond the reach of our species, it could be carried across oceans, dragged into climates it was never meant to inhabit, or swallowed entirely when its plate slips beneath another. Civilizations may crumble not because of war, not because of famine, but simply because the ground beneath them was never loyal, never still. The continents carry fossils in their drift. They carry the bones of fish across deserts, the remnants of forests across polar ice. They carry forgotten coastlines into the mountains, and lost rivers into the sea. Movement erases, but it also preserves in strange, hidden ways. A stone lifted high in the Alps may still whisper of an ocean floor. A fossil in Antarctica may still carry the memory of a warm, Greenland. The drift reminds us that Earth has no fixed shape, no final design. It is an organism of stone, restless, alive in its slowness. And our lives, our memories, our fragile histories are written on its skin like ink on water. Always moving, always dissolving. And if the continents themselves can forget where they once belonged, if even the bones of the world cannot remain where they first formed, then perhaps memory itself is not something we can ever keep. Perhaps it too is always drifting, breaking, and reforming into something we can no longer recognize. And yet, if the continents can wander, if they can carry pieces of ancient seas and forests across time, then maybe memory is not lost but only carried somewhere else. Somewhere deeper, waiting. And so we ask, if the Earth's body keeps moving, carrying its stories with it, then what of the oceans that spread between these drifting lands? What forgotten secrets do they keep in their depths? The silence of the ocean floor. Beneath the oceans lies a world so silent, so still, that we often forget it exists. The floor of the sea is hidden beneath miles of water, cloaked in darkness, untouched by sunlight. And yet, it is not empty. It is alive with the slow breathing of the planet. It is here, in the deepest quiet, that Earth remembers and forgets the most. The ocean floor is a place of birth and burial. It gives rise to new crust at the mid-ocean ridges, molten rock spilling upward, hardening as it spreads outward into vast plains. And it takes back old crust at the trenches, where the seafloor sinks beneath continents, vanishing into the mantle. Creation and erasure, joined in an endless loop. The sea writes its memory into stone, and then erases it again, over and over. What is lost in this silence? Entire coastlines, pulled down into darkness. Ancient islands, their peaks once crowned by forests, now swallowed whole. Sediments of rivers, carrying the stories of mountains, spread across the seabed like pages in a book. But in time, these pages are torn away, buried deeper, melted, forgotten. Unlike the continents, which can hold their scars for billions of years, the ocean floor does not keep history for long. No place on Earth is renewed more quickly. no place forgets more completely. And yet, fragments remain. Fossils fall through the dark water and rest in silence, preserved until the seafloor itself is taken. Isotopes hide in sediments, telling us of climates long past, of rains that fell and forests that grew, of atmospheres that breathed differently than our own. The ocean floor does not willingly remember, but sometimes it cannot help it. Sometimes the past clings to the stone just long enough for us to find it. There is a strange comfort in this. That even in forgetting, there are traces. That even the most silent places cannot fully erase what they have carried. Perhaps our own history is not gone, but hidden in these deep, shifting plains. Perhaps it waits, in silence, for someone to uncover it. But what if there are memories so deep that they can never be recovered? What if the ocean has swallowed civilizations we will never know? Entire continents may have risen and fallen, erased before we ever learn to ask the question. If the seafloor forgets every 200 million years, then what stories have been lost in that cycle? Could it be that we are only the latest chapter of a much older book, one whose earlier pages have already been erased by the deep? The silence of the ocean floor is not empty silence. It is the silence of a library whose shelves are burned and rebuilt again and again, leaving behind only scattered fragments of ash. And in that silence, there is humility. We may search, we may measure, we may probe with machines, but there will always be more lost than found. And so, as we float on the surface, gazing across the water, we may feel a stillness. Not because the ocean is calm, but because it is vast enough to carry every memory, every erasure, every possibility we cannot imagine. And yet, if the oceans can swallow continents and erase whole ages, then what of the creatures who lived before? Could their traces be buried in places we have never touched? Could the silence of the ocean floor still be hiding voices we have never learned to hear? The whisper of subduction. Beneath the surface of the earth, the continents are not as fixed as they appear. What feels like permanent ground beneath our feet is only a temporary stage, a shifting raft of stone, sliding slowly on a sea of molten movement. Subduction, the quiet swallowing of one plate beneath another, is a story of disappearance, a vanishing act written not in centuries but in millions of years. Whole coastlines, entire mountain chains, have slipped beneath the waves, carried down into the mantle like pages of a book erased before the eyes could finish reading. It happens silently. It happens invisibly. Yet the record of life, the bones, the shells, the structures we might call homes of a vanished world, are dragged down too, pressed into darkness and melted away, their traces thin to nothing. And here, in this process of geological erasure, we confront a thought both humbling and strange: how much of history has already been taken from us by the earth itself? If subduction erases not just land but memory, then the timeline we hold so tightly is incomplete, full of gaps where entire chapters may have been lost. Could there have been stories beneath stories, buried deeper than we can ever recover? Is it possible that the record of civilizations, if they ever rose before us, has already been consumed, their ruins now molten whispers folded into the heart of the planet? The ocean floor itself, younger than any mountain, tells us this truth: nothing it carries is older than 200 million years, a blink compared to the age of the earth. The sea erases its own past with ruthless efficiency, sliding old crust into the furnace while new crust forms fresh at the ridges. Everything is reborn, but everything is forgotten. And so we wander on land, believing we stand on permanence, when in truth we are balanced on a shifting memory that rewrites itself beneath our feet. Maybe this is why silence lingers in our search for origins, because the earth, as much as it remembers, also forgets. And yet, the forgetting is not total. Sometimes, fragments escape. A mountain that refuses to bow. A fossil pressed into stone that somehow resisted destruction. A continent that survives subduction's hunger for a little longer. The survival is never guaranteed. It is an accident. A sliver of mercy in an ocean of loss. But it is enough. Enough to remind us that though the earth erases, it also spares. And in what it spares, we search for meaning. And so, as the crust sinks and continents slide into the abyss, we ask ourselves softly, if so much can be erased by the patient hunger of geology, then what might we still be missing? What might lie beneath, sealed away forever, never to be touched by human eyes? The thought carries us gently, like a tide. And it leads us toward another kind of disappearance, not beneath the sea, but beneath the air itself. The atmosphere's secret memory. The air feels so light, so formless, as if it were nothing at all. Yet above us and around us it holds the breath of ages. Every inhale we take carries whispers of the past, oxygen born in ancient forests, carbon released by volcanoes older than mountains, nitrogen that has circled the earth for billions of years. The atmosphere, though invisible, is a library of change. Its chemistry has shifted again and again, sometimes violently, sometimes softly, writing invisible chapters of life and death. There was a time when the air was thick with methane and carbon dioxide, an alien breath beneath a young Sunday. Then came oxygen, a gift from photosynthetic life, a gas that poisoned one world and yet made another possible. Each transition was a forgetting, but also a remembering. Gases dissolved, elements locked into stone, others freed. Each shift was both an erasure and an inscription. The rocks remember some of these changes, bands of iron rusted by oxygen long gone, bubbles trapped in amber ice holding air from a frozen past. And yet so much is missing. The winds carried it away. The gases bled into space. What if there were other atmospheres we will never know, other chemical states of the sky erased without trace, too brief to leave a fossil behind? Could it be that entire worlds have breathed and exhaled, and the record is gone, leaving us only fragments of what the sky once held? When we look up at the stars, we see atmospheres shimmering around other planets, some thick with clouds, some veiled in haze, some stripped bare. And we wonder, was Earth, too, once cloaked in veils we can no longer imagine? Was the air once heavy with scents and vapors that no longer exist, forgotten perfumes of a lost epoch? The sky is both a witness and a betrayer. It carries the breath of life, but it does not hold it forever. It changes, it drifts, it releases. And so the atmosphere is not a stable archive but a shifting ghost, a memory always rewriting itself. Even the air we breathe now will not remain. One day it too will be altered, dissolved, released into the silence of space. And yet, in this fleetingness, in this fragile and temporary balance, we find a strange comfort. For even if the atmosphere forgets, we remember that forgetting itself is part of the Earth's way. And with that thought, we turn to another kind of record, one held not in stone, nor in air, but in water. A memory carried by the seas, flowing endlessly, never at rest, always whispering of what came. The breath of cosmic silence. What is silence, when measured on the scale of the universe? To us, silence is the absence of sound. But in the cosmos, silence is never truly empty. It is filled with faint echoes, subtle vibrations, and the slow murmur of background radiation, a lingering breath from the universe's first moments. What feels still is only quiet compared to the roaring past. In the vast reaches between galaxies, silence has texture. It is the soft hum of photons, stretched across eternity. It is the whisper of hydrogen atoms colliding once in a million years. It is the patient flicker of light, moving endlessly without resistance. The silence of space is not the silence of nothing. It is a deep, resonant quiet that carries memory, like the faded lines of an ancient song. Astronomers point radio dishes toward the night sky, and what they hear is not nothingness. Instead, they detect a cosmic background, a remnant glow from when the universe was young and hot. This background is a canvas of static, faint but unrelenting, telling us that even silence remembers. It carries the aftertaste of creation, a memory older than stars. We imagine silence as peaceful, yet cosmic silence can feel overwhelming. Between galaxies, the gaps are immense, millions of light-years of near emptiness. A lone particle may travel through this ocean of void for billions of years before touching another. To drift there would be to swim in stillness beyond comprehension, with no voice, no echo, no return. Silence here is not absence but infinity stretched thin. And yet, this silence breathes. Black holes exhale faint radiation at the edges of their shadows. Neutron stars pulse out rhythms like hidden metronomes. Even the background itself ripples with the faint scars of ancient sound waves, frozen in place since the dawn of matter. The silence of the cosmos is not dead, it is alive with memory, quiet yet eternal. To stand beneath the night sky is to feel this silence pressing gently upon us. It seeps through the spaces between stars, a soft weight against our ears. Our ancestors, looking upward, may not have heard the science of silence, but they felt its mystery. The hush of the night was the hush of infinity. It reminded them, as it reminds us, that the universe is larger than any song we can sing, any word we can form. The silence does not answer questions. It only deepens them. It asks us to imagine what lies beyond our instruments, what whispers travel beyond our reach. If silence can carry the afterglow of creation for almost 14 billion years, what else does it hold? What truths wait, hidden in its endless breath? And so, silence becomes a companion. Not emptiness, but presence. Not void, but memory. In its breath, we hear the long patience of the cosmos waiting, always waiting, for us to listen more closely. The dream of forgotten stars. Long before our sun was born, other stars lived and died. They lit the darkness, burned through their lifetimes, and fell into silence. Yet, their stories are not lost. Every breath we take, every atom of iron in our blood, every grain of dust beneath our feet, once belonged to stars that no longer shine. They are forgotten, yet they live through us. In the early universe, the first stars were giants, burning bright and short. They had no patience for time. Some lasted only a few million years, a brief flicker compared to our sun's billions. They exploded violently, scattering elements that would become the seeds of new worlds. Those stars are gone, their light faded beyond reach, but their dream continues, hidden in us, in Earth, in everything that follows. Each forgotten star was a dreamer of matter. Through fusion, they stitched together the universe's alphabet: carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, iron. Without their fiery hearts, there would be no life, no oceans, no trees, no thoughts to wonder at all. The universe dreamed itself awake through them, only to let them vanish into memory. What remains is not their bodies, but their legacy, fragments of their dreams still echoing in every corner of existence. Sometimes, their remnants drift silently across space as ashes of light. White dwarfs, cooling into invisibility. Neutron stars, pulsing faintly before fading. Black holes, swallowing their past and leaving only silence. They are graves and monuments, reminders of brilliance that once was. Yet, to call them forgotten is not to say they are gone. Their essence remains scattered, woven into everything new. Imagine a child looking up at the sky, pointing to a star. That star's light may be thousands of years old. It may already have died, its fire extinguished. But the child sees it alive, shimmering. The universe teaches us that even death carries beauty, even endings can appear as beginnings. Stars may vanish, but their dreams endure in the trails of light that keep reaching us. We, too, are part of this dream. The calcium in our bones, the oxygen in our lungs, the gold in our hands, all born in stellar cores. The forgotten stars live on as memory carved into matter itself. They dreamed, and in that dream, we were shaped. Their story is not finished. It continues with us, and perhaps beyond us, into futures we cannot see. And when our own sun one day fades, scattering its matter into the cosmos, it too will join this silent dream. Perhaps life elsewhere will one day breathe with atoms that once belonged to us. Perhaps memory is not something we hold, but something the universe carries forward, through cycles of burning, breaking, and becoming again. The forgotten stars are not gone. They are asleep, dreaming in us. They are the quiet architects of everything we know. When we look at the night sky, we are not just seeing distant lights. We are looking into the echo of dreams, ancient, fading, but never lost. The first sparks of complexity. Life, in its earliest whispers, was little more than chemistry daring to dream of permanence. The oceans were no longer silent. Within them, molecules gathered, collided, and reassembled, pulled together by forces they could not name but could never resist. Every droplet of water became a small arena where possibility played itself out endlessly. Most arrangements failed. Yet some, by sheer chance, endured. A fragment of pattern. A chain of self-recognition. A sequence that, once formed, could be copied again. The boundary between lifeless matter and the beginnings of memory was thin, almost imperceptible. Fatty molecules aligned into hollow spheres, fragile shells that shielded the fragile. Inside them, fragments of RNA clicked into place, strands of coded chance. These threads did not think, did not choose, but they carried something profound, the ability to preserve shape across time. A faint echo of survival whispered inside their spiral. We call this emergence. Not an invention, not a miracle, but a cascade. Once the first loops of replication began, the rest was inevitable. A spark had been caught in the machinery of matter. The ocean was now a library, writing and rewriting itself in endless drafts. Many collapsed into silence, but enough survived to make tomorrow different from yesterday. In these hidden shallows, entropy's tyranny was not broken, but bent. Order found a way to prolong itself, if only briefly. This was not life as we know it, not yet. It was a fragile rehearsal, molecules rehearsing their roles, as if the universe were trying its first lines in a play it had not yet written. The Earth itself became co-author. Hydrothermal vents offered warmth and minerals. Lightning stirred the soup of chance. Sunlight penetrated, energizing fragile bonds. What had once been scattered randomness now conspired toward patterns. From this restless chemistry, the first whispers of inheritance were born. A lineage of mistakes and continuities began life's true beginning. And so, the sparks of complexity burned faintly, hidden from the stars above, yet destined to leave marks far greater than the tallest mountains or deepest seas. The ocean remembers. If Earth has memory, it began with water. The oceans were the first archive, the first vast vault where time etched its story not in stone, but in salt, in temperature, in the delicate balance of dissolved gases. Every ripple carried records of heat and wind. Every tide repeated rhythms tied to the moon's distant pull. The ocean was not silent, it hummed with chemistry, with gradients of light and darkness. In its depths, no sunlight reached, yet minerals surged upward in heated plumes. There, strange reactions carved signatures into the currents. Tiny protolife forms clung to this memory, riding waves of energy older than themselves. They, too, recorded the sea, building faint imprints of information into their fragile structures. Water became both cradle and witness. It preserved what the land could not, the uninterrupted cycle of dissolution and rebirth. Rocks eroded, mountains crumbled, but the ocean gathered these fragments, carrying them into layers that would one day harden into record. To look into ancient seawater would be to see not just chemistry, but the very scaffolding of continuity. The ocean also remembered absence. It bore witness to the first failures of life, to experiments that dissolved into silence. Not every pattern lasted. Most were swallowed, erased, like words washed from sand. But erasure itself left a rhythm, a record of impermanence that shaped what followed. Even now, deep within its currents, the ocean holds echoes of that first age. Isotopes locked into sediments tell us about atmospheres long gone. Salinity marks slow cycles of evaporation and return. Life remembers, but water remembers longer. To imagine Earth without oceans is to imagine a planet stripped of memory. Without them, there would be no stage for the drama of survival. No archive for the rise of breath and bone. The ocean remembers not because it chooses, but because it cannot help but hold. It is Earth's great ledger, written in waves. And somewhere within it, the story of us had already begun. The echoes that refused to die. What is an echo, if not the ghost of a voice? A ripple that refuses to vanish at once, lingering in the chambers of air, of stone, of time. In the vast silence that followed the universe's first breath, echoes were born too, not of sound, but of light, of energy, of the trembling fabric of existence itself. Long after the first flash of creation dimmed, after the newborn cosmos expanded beyond recognition, faint patterns remained. They stretched across the dark, woven into the background of space. To the naked eye, they were invisible. To the patient instruments of our species, they became whispers, a memory, written not in stone, but in radiation. This cosmic afterglow we call the microwave background is an echo from the universe's childhood. It is everywhere, equally present in every direction, a faint hiss behind the stars. When scientists first discovered it, they thought it was noise, a mistake, perhaps even the droppings of birds nesting inside their antenna. But no, it was real. It was the soundless song of creation itself. An echo tells us not only what was spoken but how the chamber around it shaped that voice. The universe's echo does the same. In its ripples are clues, the density of the young cosmos, the rhythm of its fluctuations, the seeds of galaxies that would later ignite. Within the faint static lies a cosmic autobiography. But echoes are not eternal. On Earth, they fade with distance. In the universe, too, they weaken with age. Even the microwave background will not last forever. Someday, when stars have burned out, when matter itself has grown thin, even the afterglow will fade into silence. And yet, while it lingers, it reminds us, creation is never clean, never absolute. It leaves behind traces, fingerprints, residues. Nothing that begins is ever entirely gone. What if our own voices, too, leave echoes that travel farther than we know? What if the soft words whispered to a loved one, the songs sung to no one, the sighs of grief all carry into the fabric of existence, faint but real, stitched into the vibrations of air, water, earth? Perhaps the universe remembers more than we imagine. Not only in fossils, in rocks, in radiation, but in the trembling of its own skin. Perhaps even silence is an echo waiting to be heard. For what is silence, but the last echo of everything that has passed? The river beneath time. Imagine time not as a straight line, but as a river shifting, bending, meandering across a vast and endless landscape. We tend to see it as forward only, a current dragging us from birth to death, from origin to ending. But rivers are more complicated than that. They split, they merge, they leave oxbow lakes behind as scars of their former paths. What if time flows the same way? At the dawn of the universe, time itself was born, yet perhaps it was never a single current. In those first fractions of a second, possibilities may have rushed outward like tributaries, each carrying its own version of reality. Some streams grew wide, carving deep valleys of galaxies and stars. Others may have withered, forgotten, sealed away like abandoned channels buried in sediment. If so, the time we inhabit might not be the only one. We are adrift on one particular current, but there may be others, flowing parallel, unseen. Rivers beneath rivers. Currents beneath currents. Scientists sometimes imagine the possibility of multiple universes, timelines branching not unlike a delta meeting the sea. But even without invoking such grand ideas, we can think of time as layered. The rocks beneath our feet hold their own version of time, measured in mineral transformations, in radioactive decay. The oceans measure it in slow circulation, the forests in rings of trees. Each layer flows at its own pace, its own rhythm, yet all belong to the same river. And we, too, are tributaries. Each life is a small stream feeding into the greater flow. Each memory is a droplet carried downstream, merging, dissolving, vanishing into the collective ocean. But the river is not simple. Sometimes it folds back on itself. Memory works this way. So does grief. We return again and again to the same moment, circling, reliving, reshaping. Time, then, may not be linear even within us. It is recursive, spiraled, full of bends and backwaters. And what of the end? Where does the river of time empty? Some say into nothingness, a dry bed. Others imagine it pours into another ocean altogether, beyond our grasp. Perhaps it cascades like a waterfall into a future unrecognizable to us. The river has carried mountains into dust. It has carved valleys into the earth. And one day, it may carry even time itself into something new, something beyond beginnings and endings, beyond flow itself. We drift upon its surface, unable to see the source, unable to see the mouth, yet always moving. We are passengers, but also water, also stone, also memory. The river of time does not simply carry us. It is us. Shadows of forgotten light. What if the universe remembers every flicker of light, even the ones we no longer see? The night sky is filled with stars, yet most of them are ghosts. Their light began its journey millions of years ago, long before humans looked upward. Some of those stars have already died, collapsing into black holes or cooling into dwarfs, but their radiance still travels, whispering across the cosmic sea. We see them not as they are, but as they once were. Every starlight that reaches us is a letter from the past, glowing with memory. This raises a haunting thought: perhaps nothing luminous is ever truly gone. Every photon carries history, like a seed drifting on the winds of time. When it touches our eyes, it completes a journey older than our species, older even than Earth's youngest mountains. It is the faint persistence of what was, refusing to vanish. In this way, light is both messenger and ghost, a presence that reminds us the past has not fully left. But what about the lights that never reached us? Some stars may have burned only briefly, their brilliance swallowed by dust clouds or bent by the gravity of invisible masses. They leave no memory for us to hold, no trace on our retinas. Their lives vanish into silence, unrecorded, unremembered. The cosmos does not guarantee remembrance, it only scatters possibilities. The galaxies themselves are archives of forgotten illumination. Spirals of dust and stars hide ancient flashes, supernovae that outshone whole galaxies for weeks, then faded back into quiet dark. If we had been here to see them, they would have seared our skies with wonder. But the universe does not wait for witnesses. It burns, collapses, reignites, indifferent to whether anyone notices. And yet, we try to piece together what once shone. Astronomers catch faint traces, afterglows buried in radio waves, X-rays echoing in intergalactic clouds. These echoes are like fingerprints of vanished flames. With them, we rebuild the lost stories, resurrecting the light that history itself had almost erased. Science becomes an act of remembrance, restoring shadows to their rightful brilliance. There is something profoundly human in this. We, too, wish not to be forgotten. We light fires, carve symbols, build monuments, record words, and project ourselves forward into a time we may never see. Like stars, we burn brightly for a while, leaving trails in memory. Perhaps our yearning to remember and be remembered is an echo of the universe's own luminous persistence. But eventually, even light succumbs to distance and entropy. Photons stretch across the expanding fabric of space, their energy dwindling, their colors fading. Over unimaginable scales, they become redder, weaker, until they blend into the cosmic background, an almost imperceptible whisper of existence. In the farthest future, when the last star has burned, only these stretched ghosts of photons will remain. Memory itself will dim. So we ask, is the universe forgetting, or is it still remembering in ways we cannot yet perceive? Perhaps the faintest traces of light still carry every story. Perhaps nothing luminous is ever lost, only transformed into subtler echoes. We live in the shadows of forgotten light, yet those shadows may be keeping watch over us, patient, eternal, unseen. The ocean of silent time. Imagine time not as a straight river, but as an ocean vast, silent, shifting beneath us. Each moment we live is like a ripple on its surface. We ride those waves, believing in sequence, in past and future. Yet from the ocean's depths, perhaps time is all at once, every ripple, every current, every silent surge existing together. If so, then our sense of flowing forward is an illusion, a necessary trick to keep us moving. The ocean of time is not calm. It churns with hidden storms. Black holes stretch it, bending seconds into years. Neutron stars warp its fabric, slowing clocks that dare drift too close. On Earth, time moves fractionally faster in the mountains than in the valleys, a reminder that even here, the ocean is not uniform. We sail on its shifting tides without noticing the subtle bends beneath us. And yet, time itself makes no sound. We do not hear it crash, nor feel its current directly. It slips past silently, marking itself only through change, the decay of atoms, the fall of leaves, the deepening of wrinkles, the widening of distance between galaxies. Silence is its true nature, and in that silence, we project meaning. We invent hours, calendars, histories. But the ocean remains indifferent, vast beyond our grasp. Some philosophers once wondered, what if time is not a thing at all? What if it is simply our way of noticing motion? If every particle stood still, every star ceased to move, would time exist? Or would the ocean dry up, leaving only stillness? It is a haunting question, one that has never left us. Perhaps time is not a ruler measuring events, but the events themselves, the ocean made of ripples, inseparable from what stirs it. If this is true, then our memories are fragments of waves. We carry them like seashells, remnants of patterns that once broke upon the shore. Some shells are polished smooth, others fractured, some lost forever beneath the tides. Memory, like the ocean, keeps what it can, discards what it must. We live not only in flowing time but in remembering and forgetting, currents that shape our very sense of self. There are places where this ocean feels heavier, as though time itself gathers and thickens. Standing before ruins, we sense its pressure. Walking through forests older than nations, we hear its silence deepen. Holding the hand of someone fading, we feel its current pull. These moments remind us that time is not abstract, it presses, it shapes, it swallows. But in its silence, there is also mercy. Because the ocean does not rush, it allows stars to form, planets to cool, life to unfold. It does not hurry the seed or the stone. It offers a vastness in which everything can happen, from the simplest ripple to the grandest wave. Its stillness is what makes existence possible. Without the quiet ocean, there could be no journey at all. And so, when we look at the sky, when we feel the turning of the earth, perhaps we are not merely drifting forward. Perhaps we are afloat in something greater, a boundless silence that holds every ripple at once. The ocean of silent time surrounds us, carries us, forgets us, and remembers us all in the same infinite breath. The memory of collisions. The earth still remembers the blows that shaped it. Not in words, but in scars written across its crust, in craters softened by erosion, in metals scattered deep within its mantle. Each collision was more than an impact, it was a conversation, a violent dialogue between wandering bodies of stone. These cosmic visitors, some small as a mountain, others larger than whole countries, carried both destruction and possibility. They carved wounds into the planet, but also seeded it with the elements that would one day make blood, bone, and breath possible. Imagine standing at the edge of one of these craters in the newborn Earth. The air is still thick with vapor, the sea still boiling in patches, and yet above, the sky is heavy with motion. Rocks fall from the heavens not as rare meteors, but as frequent reminders that this world is not yet at peace. Each strike reshapes rivers, redirects the course of mountains, and alters the rhythm of the Earth's early crust. But collisions were not just chaos. They brought gifts. Iron cores that sank into Earth's heart. Gold, platinum, and rare elements sprinkled through its layers. Even water, frozen inside ancient comets, may have arrived through impacts, delivered in icy fragments that melted into oceans. Out of fire and fury, tenderness slowly emerged. Out of devastation came the ingredients of life. To us, these scars are ancient whispers. The moon itself is a reminder it may have been born from a single colossal collision, when a Mars-sized body struck Earth, ejecting molten debris that gathered into our silent companion. The moon's tides would later guide the rhythm of seas, shaping life's first fragile experiments. Collisions tell us something profound: creation and destruction are not opposites, but twins. Every fracture in Earth's history opened a space for something new to arise. Just as forests grow richer after fire, planets become fertile after chaos. Without those impacts, there would be no oceans, no atmosphere as we know it, and perhaps no chance for living beings to wonder at the night sky. The Earth carries these memories not as tragedies, but as necessary beginnings. If you walk upon the land, if you breathe air or drink water, you are touching the inheritance of collisions. Every heartbeat is a quiet echo of cosmic violence long past. And as the Earth turns beneath the stars, it still listens to the memory of those blows, as if waiting for the next conversation from the sky. The ocean's first breath. At first, Earth had no oceans. Its surface was molten, a restless sea of fire. But time softened it. The planet exhaled steam from countless volcanoes, and in that steam lay water that had been locked away in minerals, or delivered by wandering comets. Slowly, drop by drop, the first oceans were born. They began as a haze, a dense fog covering the cooling crust, then condensed into rains that lasted for centuries, a ceaseless downpour that filled the planet's hollows. Imagine the sound of that rain, not gentle, but endless, falling upon rock that hissed and steamed with every touch. Rivers formed before there were valleys to guide them. Puddles spread across plains that had never known water. Slowly, lakes gathered, then joined into seas. The Earth's first blue skin was forming. With oceans came silence, not emptiness, but a different kind of calm. The storms continued above, but beneath the waves there was protection. The water absorbed heat, cooled the crust, and softened the violence of the surface. It created a space shielded from harsh radiation, a cradle where delicate chemistry could experiment without being destroyed. Oceans were more than water, they were possibility liquefied. Those first seas were not like ours. They were heavy with minerals, rich with iron, and colored not blue but red and green, stained by the elements dissolving into them. Yet within that alien chemistry, life's first whispers stirred. Molecules drifted, collided, and combined, sheltered by the embrace of the ocean. The waves became laboratories, their tides experiments of chance. The moon, freshly formed, began to tug at these waters. Tides pulled molecules across shores, concentrating them, scattering them, giving rhythm to the ocean's stillness. Perhaps in a shallow pool, warmed by volcanic heat, something extraordinary assembled for the first time, a structure capable of remembering, capable of copying itself. The ocean's first breath was not air, but continuity. Water is memory itself. Every river today is part of a story that began with those endless rains. Every drop in your veins carries atoms that once fell on the newborn Earth. To drink water is to share in the planet's first gesture of gentleness. To hear waves is to hear the sound of Earth's earliest calm, after centuries of fire and storm. The ocean's breath never ended. It continues still, in tides and clouds, in rivers and rainfall. It is the rhythm of a planet that learned to soften itself, that chose to cradle life rather than only burn. And in every wave that breaks on a shore, we can still hear that first exhalation, the sound of Earth finding its voice. The weight of forgotten stars. What happens to the light of stars once they vanish? Do they truly go out, or do they whisper their glow into the silence, embedding faint signatures across time itself? The night sky above us is not a simple canvas of pinpricks. It is a deep archive, heavy with memory. Each photon is a relic, an exile from a burning sun, traveling across billions of years just to brush against the surface of Earth, or the lens of an eye. To see a star is to hold in one fragile instant the collapse of eternity. But the stars do not stay. Some swell into red giants, some shrink into white dwarfs, some fall inward until even light itself cannot leave. The universe scatters their graves everywhere. The ashes of old suns become nebulae, clouds of color drifting across space. Some turn into neutron stars, small but impossibly dense, where a spoonful would outweigh a mountain. And some, the most secretive of all, vanish inside black holes, hiding their stories behind horizons we cannot pierce. When we gaze upward, what we see is not the sky as it is, but as it was. We are looking at fossils of light. The North Star beams from centuries ago. The glow of Andromeda is already ancient when it touches us. And some stars that shine in our view no longer even exist, their light has outlived their bodies. The universe is an echo chamber, where past things whisper long after they have fallen silent. And yet, what is forgotten is not truly gone. The heavy elements in our bones, iron, calcium, oxygen, were once the burning fuel of stars that perished billions of years before Earth was born. We are made of their remains, which means the cosmos is not a stranger. It is inside us, walking, breathing, dreaming through the fragile frame of our bodies. We are not just witnesses to the stars. We are their continuation. Still, there is sorrow in the way stars vanish. Their light becomes background, stretched by the expanding universe into longer and longer waves. Some slip into invisibility, their glow turned cold by time's expansion. Their weight is carried only in the dark. Perhaps the stars are not truly forgotten, but folded into a deeper layer of memory than we can reach. Perhaps, if time itself has structure, those forgotten suns are still blazing in a corner we cannot yet step into. To think of this is to feel the melancholy of the cosmos. It is to stand under a sky of fading fires, each a reminder that brilliance is temporary, but never meaningless. The universe teaches us that even what vanishes leaves behind its gravity. That even absence holds weight. That memory can outlive the body of light itself. And so, every night, the forgotten stars press upon us, not in brightness but in silence. We walk beneath their absence, carrying in our own blood the weight of their final gift. And whether or not we remember them, they never truly leave. For they are already written in us. The silence between galaxies. If you could step outside the Milky Way and drift into the vastness between galaxies, you would enter a silence deeper than any Earth has ever known. No wind, no air, no sound. Only darkness stretched so far that even imagination hesitates. The void between galaxies is not empty. It is full of a quiet tension, the faint pull of gravity reaching across millions of light years, the afterglow of creation diffused so thin it feels like a whisper. Galaxies themselves are like islands, their spirals glowing with billions of stars. Yet the spaces between them dwarf their brilliance. For every shining cluster, there is a gulf of nothingness many times larger. The voids are vast enough to swallow superclusters whole. And though we cannot hear it, they are not truly silent. Particles slip through, rare as breath in a frozen desert. Dark matter weaves invisible scaffolding. Photons of ancient light skim past, stretched until they are ghostly echoes of the Big Bang itself. Drifting here, you would feel the pull of no single home. The Milky Way would shrink behind you, the Andromeda galaxy hovering ahead like a faint smudge. Beyond them, more faint smudges, Triangulum, Virgo, Coma. The farther you look, the more crowded the horizon seems. But up close, each one is alone. They burn bright, but they are separated by gulfs so wide that light takes millions of years to bridge them. In this space, human history is smaller than a spark. Civilizations rise and vanish without sending so much as a whisper across the intergalactic sea. We imagine ourselves as cosmic observers, yet all our stories remain trapped inside our island of stars. The silence between galaxies is a reminder that the universe is larger than our voices. And still, there is beauty here. For the void gives galaxies their stage. Without the backdrop of blackness, their spirals would not shimmer. Without separation, their collisions would lose meaning. The silence between galaxies is not empty absence. It is the canvas on which everything shines. It makes you wonder, if intelligence arose elsewhere, in another island of light, could they ever cross this gulf? Could signals endure the silence long enough to be heard? Or are all civilizations, no matter how advanced, condemned to solitude? The silence between galaxies may be the truest measure of distance, not just physical, but existential. Yet perhaps this separation is merciful. If all light collapsed into one place, there would be no contrast, no shape, no individuality. By being apart, galaxies can bloom into spirals, merge, or drift alone, each carrying its own memory of stars. The silence between them is not a rejection. It is a space of becoming. And so, the void is not to be feared. It is to be honored, for it is the silence that lets the music of galaxies play. And while we may never step across it, we can still look into it and understand, even in absence, the universe is profoundly full. Oceans that remember. What if the oceans themselves were memory? Each wave folding over the next, carrying traces of what has passed before. Salt water is not simply liquid, it is a vast archive, a body of time. The molecules that surge through tides today are the same that once touched trilobites, ammonites, and the first human hands cupped in thirst. The seas are a restless library, their pages torn and rewritten endlessly, yet never erased. When storms rise, the surface becomes a script written too quickly to be read. Yet deep currents hold slower stories, moving like veins beneath the skin of the planet. They take centuries, sometimes millennia, to complete their circuits, and within their spirals lies the persistence of memory. A drop of water sinking into the North Atlantic might not rise again until it has drifted beneath every ocean on Earth. The chemistry of the sea also whispers of history. Salts, minerals, and isotopes tell of rivers that poured their sediments, of glaciers that melted, of continents that crumbled grain by grain. Each dissolved trace is a footnote of planetary transformation. But oceans also forget. Sunlight shatters the surface, heat stirs turbulence, and winds scatter memory into fragments. Just as we forget dreams upon waking, the sea forgets details while keeping patterns. It remembers rhythms, not faces. It remembers cycles, not events. And yet, when you stand on a shoreline and listen to waves collapsing against rock, it is difficult not to hear echoes of voices long gone. Sailors who crossed unknown horizons. Fishers who relied on the tides. Civilizations that rose near deltas and drowned when the waters claimed them. Oceans remind us of impermanence. They teach us that to endure is not to remain the same, but to transform without ceasing. Like memory, they are both fragile and infinite, holding us while slipping. Slipping away. Stones that dream in silence. What if stones were dreamers? To us, they appear motionless, indifferent, lifeless. But in the deep time of geology, every stone has moved, shifted, melted, fractured, and reformed. Each grain of sand was once part of a mountain. Each pebble may have been carved from a summit that towered into the sky. Stones are patient narrators, speaking a language so slow we mistake it for silence. Inside a stone lie minerals that crystallized under unimaginable pressures, cooled in chambers of magma, or grew in the sediments of vanished seas. Their lattices lock in tiny fragments of past atmospheres, past climates, even past radiation from ancient suns. To hold a stone is to hold a fragment of planetary autobiography. Some stones are born of fire. Basalts spill from volcanoes, black rivers that harden into frozen memory. Others are born of burial, limestone pressed from shells, sandstone compacted from dunes, shale compressed from mud. Each carries the faint signatures of creatures or forces that no longer exist. But stones also erode. They lose shape, crumble, dissolve into dust that rides winds across continents. That dust may settle on glaciers, deserts, or oceans, where it begins again in another form. The dream is not fixed, it is a dream that continues through change. To us, dreams last minutes. For stones, dreams last millions of years. In their silence lies endurance, but also fragility. Mountains fall, monuments weather, and even the hardest granite eventually bows to rain. Perhaps stones do not dream as we do. Perhaps they simply embody the dream of the earth itself, to create, to crumble, to rise again. If you press your palm against one, you may not hear words, but you might feel time, a slow pulse older than memory. Stones remind us that permanence is an illusion. Even what seems eternal is already moving toward transformation. Their silence is not emptiness but patience, waiting for us to listen in the language of deep time. The threshold of memory. What is the last thing the earth remembers before it forgets us? Perhaps it is not a monument, not a city, not even the scars of our machines. Perhaps it is the echo of heat in the rocks, a faint whisper of chemistry where our presence once stirred. The earth, like an old mind, holds memories unevenly. Some dissolve within moments. Others persist like shadows across eons. To imagine the threshold of memory is to imagine the delicate line between what remains and what fades forever. Consider the ocean floor. New crust forms at the ridges, hardening into black basalt, swallowing old stories into the deep mantle. If our cities rest upon this shifting skin, then in time they are dragged downward into fire, folded back into silence. What survives that plunge? A fragment of alloy, a smear of isotope, a crystal tainted by an age of industry. The threshold is not clear. It is porous, fragile, uncertain. The earth keeps some truths, abandons others. In deserts, the threshold takes another form. Wind scours every surface, polishing stone, lifting dust into the sky. Sand buries and reveals again. An artifact hidden there might endure for tens of millennia, yet beyond that, even glass wears down, even steel turns to rust, and even bones are ground to powder. Only the dunes themselves seem eternal, yet even they migrate, shapeless, erasing maps. The memory of us drifts with them, grain by grain. In the forests, the threshold is quicker. Roots reclaim walls, moss softens every sharp edge, and within centuries, all becomes soil. Here, forgetting is lush, green, and absolute. Life swallows life, turning structure into nutrients, memory into matter. But beneath the humus, beneath the roots, fragments can sleep in layers of clay. To cross the threshold here means falling deep enough into burial, slipping beneath the cycle of renewal into stillness where air and rain cannot reach. And then there is the threshold of ice. Glaciers may cradle what we leave, sealing it in cold, pressing it between blue layers. In ice, memory can last tens of thousands of years, until meltwater carries it away, back into rivers, back into oceans. When the ice is gone, the memory it kept vanishes too, as if it never existed. The threshold here is not the burial, but the melting and undoing written into the very nature of water. What if the threshold is not geological but cosmic? Radiation falls upon the earth like soft, invisible rain. Over long ages, it rewrites atoms, shifts bonds, weakens structures. A signal carved into crystal today might be blurred into nonsense after a million years of exposure. Perhaps the Earth remembers us until the sky itself insists on forgetting, dissolving every trace into noise. But maybe memory does not need permanence. Perhaps the threshold is crossed when meaning is lost. A shard of pottery, without the hand that shaped it, is already halfway to silence. A circuit board, without the code it once carried, is already past understanding. The Earth may hold countless relics, yet none will carry our voices whole. The threshold may not be time or erosion, but interpretation. To be remembered is not simply to persist, but to speak. And once the speaking ends, the forgetting begins. So we return to the question, what is the last thing Earth remembers? A mineral scar where copper once ran bright? A glass bead formed in the heat of fire? A distorted isotope marking our brief age? Somewhere, in a cave, a single line scratched into stone may remain when all else is gone. Yet even that, someday, will crumble. Memory fades, not in an instant, but in a long and gentle drift. At the threshold of memory, we glimpse our place, not immortal, not erased, but carried for a while, like a footprint at the tide's edge. The sea will rise. The sand will shift. The wave will smooth the line. And the Earth will breathe again, as if we were never here. The silence beyond us. There will come a day when the last echo of us dissolves into the silence of the Earth. Not with an ending trumpet, not with collapse or fire, but with a soft and patient erasure. This is not tragedy, it is rhythm. For every species that has come before us has entered the same silence, each leaving its faint signature, each surrendered to the deep forgetting. Imagine it, continents reshaped, mountains worn flat, oceans shifting their basins. Our cities are long dissolved, our signals lost to static, our machines eaten by rust. The silence does not come all at once. It creeps gently, like dusk across a plain, like snow covering a field. At first, fragments remain, then only traces, then only ghosts of chemical shadows. Finally, there is nothing left that speaks our name. But silence is not emptiness. It is a canvas waiting for new voices. After us, forests may arise, reefs may flourish, deserts may spread. The Earth has always known renewal. Perhaps in some deep epoch, another mind will awaken, another civilization will spark, asking the same questions we once asked. Who was here before? What stories have been buried? And they too will walk among ruins, piecing together shadows of the past, uncertain, incomplete. To imagine the silence beyond us is not to imagine despair. It is to imagine continuity. We are one thread in a vast tapestry of becoming. Our silence will not end the weaving. It will merely change the pattern. Just as trilobites once filled the seas, just as forests of strange trees once covered the land, just as ancient reptiles once ruled the skies, so too will we pass, making way for what comes next. And in that silence, the Earth will keep its own rhythm. Rivers will still carve valleys. Volcanoes will still build islands. Winds will still carry seeds across continents. The forgetting of us will be complete, yet the pulse of the planet will not falter. The silence is not absence, it is transformation. Perhaps, in that silence, even memory becomes unnecessary. To exist is to leave a trace, but to endure is to be part of something larger than remembrance. If nothing of us survives, still we were here, folded into the stone, dissolved into the air, carried in the isotopes scattered through the crust. We become part of the background, indistinguishable from the whole. That too is a kind of legacy, not separate, but merged. There is humility in this vision. To accept the silence beyond us is to accept that we were never central, never eternal. We are a flicker in the dark, brief but real, luminous for a moment, then gone. The silence is not our enemy. It is our homecoming. For in silence, We return to the earth that shaped us, to the cosmos that birthed us, to the time that carries us all. One day, the earth itself will face silence. The sun will swell, oceans will boil, and the crust will crack. Long before that, perhaps, memory will already be erased. But even as the earth is undone, the atoms that once held us will scatter into space, drifting, unmoored, free. The silence beyond us may stretch into cosmic silence, the kind that endures forever. Yet even then, silence is not nothing. It is possibility. Just as the universe once emerged from apparent nothingness, silence too can birth new beginnings. From the quiet, new stars will ignite. From the quiet, new worlds will form. From the quiet, new voices will rise. Our absence is only one chapter in a book that never ends. So let us not fear the silence. Let us walk toward it with calm. For beyond us, the earth will continue. Beyond us, the universe will continue. Beyond us, silence will hold us, not as a loss, but as part of the eternal rhythm. In the end, we were here, and that is enough.